What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another review video. Today we're going to check out the THBB10. It is the Tim Henson signature Ibanez. So as always, let's get into it. Alright, well, it's finally time to dive into this fine instrument I have on my lap here. I've got about 3.5 weeks of playing time on this thing, so I think it's finally time to just be able to give you an honest review, in my opinion, here. If you don't know me and you're new here, my name's Kenny. If you missed the unboxing video, you can go ahead and click the link up here and go maybe watch that first and then come back to this video. Or real quick, I will give you and go into the story on how I got possession of this guitar, and then as always we will go over specs. I want to do a deep dive where we kind of break everything down, check over all the QC. I want to maybe open up some cavities, see what's going on inside with the electronics, see how the soldering is and all that. And then we will plug the pickups into a meter because I want to see what's going on with the output. And I also want to weigh the guitar because, in my opinion, this is one of the lighter guitars that I've owned. But let's jump into some specs here. I think the specs are what makes this guitar awesome and makes it one of the cooler spec'd out guitars that I had, because it has all real good branded hardware and everything on it. But let's start at the body here. Obviously, you have a gloss black finish. I'm not sure whether they use poly or nitro for their finish. We all know that black in general, whether it's matte or gloss, is a pain in the butt to keep nice. So yeah, you get your fingerprints and your grease and your surface scratches and everything on there. But you just got to maintain it and it will be fine. You have a 3-ply pick guard with obviously black here, white stripe in the middle, and then black on the back side. All gold screws keeping the pick guard on. As far as the body wood, it's an American basswood or basswood, however you prefer to say it. So it's definitely a lighter wood than most of the guitars that I own. For the neck, you have a bolt-on roasted maple neck that is considered the AZ oval C shape. So feel-wise, you're a little bit rounder than I would say a typical Fender Strat or something like that, but it's not too fat, not too skinny. It's kind of, it's just the only way to describe it. It's a good feeling neck, but it's not like a Jackson neck or your typical like RG Ibanez necks or something like that. It's definitely a little bit of a more rounder feel. I believe we have a 12-inch radius. You have a roasted maple fretboard with 24 jumbo stainless steel frets. You have a dual action truss rod. You have a Graphtec nut. You have a mixture of abalone and acrylic block inlays, and some of you might know I love block inlays. I am a sucker for them. I think they look good on like any guitar that you could put them on, or that come with them, I should say. One of the things I was pleasantly surprised about is unboxing is I found that it has luminlay side dots. For some reason, I wasn't able to find that on any of the spec sheets, so it was kind of just a nice surprise when I unboxed it. As far as the hardware and stuff, you have a all gold hardware, which looks great, but we all know that gold hardware is a pain to maintain. You can't use any cleaners or polishes or anything on it because the plating is usually really thin. This seemed to be your typical gold plating hardware. Obviously, it's in good condition. The pickups still had the plastic on them when I received it. For the bridge, you have a Godot T1502 trem. You have the matching Godot locking tuners, obviously in gold, with a little touch of regular silver for the knobs. What I really like about these Godot locking tuners is they kind of step down, so you get like a little bit of a better break angle when you get down to, you know, your G, B, and E string. And then you have this really fancy string tree, which is definitely a little bit like, I don't know, fancier than your regular Fender string trees or whatnot. So I think that's really cool. As far as the scale, it is a 25.5 inch scale, because I didn't mention that before. Electronics wise, you have one volume, one tone, a 5-way switch, and then you have a humbucker and 2 single coils. I guess you would consider this a mini humbucker, because it's definitely not a full-size humbucker. I would say output-wise, they're medium, but we'll check that later. And they are the DiMarzio's Notorious pickups. I believe you have a ceramic in the bridge and then Alnico in the middle and the neck. As far as everything else is pretty typical. You have a nice body cutaway here at the top. One thing I really love is the position of the output jack. It's kind of recessed in there and then at an angle. So when you put your cord through your strap like most people do, it kind of just lines up perfectly. So I think that's really, really cool. And yeah, I have to say the specs were kind of my main attraction to this guitar, other than it looking absolutely awesome. The black and gold looks really good, even though it's like two of the most hardest to maintain things on a guitar. Like black paint is hard to maintain and gold plated hardware is a pain to keep clean. But you just got to be real careful on what you use and kind of just maintain it all the time, wiping it down every time you play it, because a lot of people have, you know, acidic sweat and everything else. So as long as you wipe it down and don't use anything you shouldn't use on it, then you'll be fine. But let's go ahead, put this down on the bench here. We'll start pulling some stuff apart. We can all check it out together. I want to weigh it. I want to plug it into the meter. And then after that, we will get it plugged in and do a little sound demo for you. All right, so we got the guitar on the bench here. What I want to do real quick is I have the meter plugged into the output. We'll just check the output of the pickups. I'm not expecting any kind of crazy numbers. You know, I'm expecting your typical numbers for the mini humbucker. It's definitely like a mediocre output and definitely not too hot. So let's see. So starting at the bridge pickup here, we are at 11.79K. Let's do the middle pickup. We're at 7.98, and then the neck pickup, 7.96. So, you know, pretty close to the numbers I had in my head. I haven't plugged a meter into this yet, so yeah, typical numbers, nothing too crazy. What I want to do now is pull the strings off, and I want to go ahead and remove the pick guard and just look at what's going on underneath, and we can inspect it together. And I want to see all the, you know, the wiring, how neat it is, and check all the soldering joints. I'm expecting it to be really nice. I mean, there shouldn't be any problems at all. So let's go ahead and pull the pick guard off real quick. All right, so pick guard's off at first glance. Everything looks pretty good. Only thing I'm noticing is wiring is a little bit messy. It probably could be a little bit neater. I might go ahead and just neaten it up a little bit while I'm in here. I'll do that off camera because it's not, you know, anything exciting to film. But you got 500K mini pots. You got your typical Ibanez switch with the circuit board on it. Yeah, everything looks decent. You have your shielding tape on the pick guard where it needs to be. Soldering joints look really good, as to be expected. But yeah, nothing really sticking out here. The only thing I noticed here is, let me see if I can carefully flip this without touching or messing anything up here. Flip this up out of the way. So, kind of shocked me. I mean, I see why they did it. There's really no need to make sure it's perfect. But you would think they would buff the whole guitar. Let me make sure we're in focus here. You would think they would buff the whole guitar. Now, on the edges of the cavities and everything, It's not buffed, which obviously, yeah, doesn't need to be because the pick guard's there. Probably, you know, just speeds up the process while in production. But I just thought that was pretty weird, you know. I mean, you would think they would just buff the whole guitar and then just put the pick guard on. But it is completely not buff, you know, right in here, right here, around the edge of this. Like I said, not a big deal. Obviously, the pick guard covers it. I just kind of shocked me a little bit. But yeah, everything looks good. Routes look good. Everything with the wiring looks good. I might just clean it up a little bit. I thought it would honestly be a little bit neater, but not a big deal. Still functions as it should. So yeah, gonna go ahead, clean it up, and get this back together, and then we will move on. All right, now I got all the covers off the back. On this guitar, they made a little tiny cavity and a cover for the output jack, being that the output jack is in an odd position, which I really like where it is actually. Where is it? It's about right here. So it's on the side. So to get to it, obviously they had to make its own separate cavity. And then you have, you know, your typical cavity for the trem with the springs. All that looks really, really clean. It's all got shielding paint inside of it. The cavity for the output has shielding paint in it. And yeah, no complaints there. I'll try to get a better close-up here of the cavity for the output jack. Focus in there so you can see that. Looks nice and clean. And then you have the cavity for the springs and everything. I just have the strings off and I didn't tune it up yet, so you can tell the bridge is in a weird position. But all that looks really clean. So let's get these covers back on and move on. All right, so real quick, I just want to do a little sound demo with some clean and a little bit of distortion, just so we can go through all the different switch positions and get an idea of what the, you know, pickup combinations sound like. What we'll do is just switch the switch as we are playing. I'm plugged directly into the Focusrite, and just to get some sounds, we are using the new Neural DSP Rabea plugin. So starting in clean with the bridge pickup. All right, now we're going to do some high gain stuff. I'm just going to play some riffs and switch the different positions, just so you can see how dramatic it is with high gain. Starting at the bridge pickup. All right, well, while we're taking a closer look at this guitar before we wrap this video on up, figured we can talk about a few things. Now, as far as the QC on it, there's really zero things that pop out at me that I would consider a problem. Especially nowadays, there's a lot of QC problems floating around out there for every guitar in every price range, I'd say. You know, you would expect this one to be pretty dang good for a guitar of this price. But again, you never know. But this particular guitar, there's zero things that I have to complain about as far as QC. Yeah, I did think it was a little weird that they didn't fully buff out the body underneath the pickguard. Does it really matter in the end? No, because it's covered up. I'm sure that the factory had their reasons for doing that, whether it's to save time or whatever it is. And then, you know, the wiring being not as neat as I thought it would be. Obviously, the solder joints and everything like that were perfect, but I did end up cleaning up the wiring a little bit, just so if I ever have to take the pickguard off or put it on or whatever, there's nothing that's gonna stick out and get pinched, and it's just make things a little bit easier. But would I consider that a QC problem? Not really, because I'm sure there's reasons that they don't fully buff out the body, and again, in the end, it's covered and it really doesn't matter. Something I think is really worth mentioning is these fret ends. So they feel absolutely amazing, and one thing I noticed, it was almost one of the first things I noticed when I unboxed it, is you know, on most guitars they'll, you know, put the fret in and then nip it with the fret nippers, and then they'll use that file that's in the block on an angle, clean it up, and then, you know, they'll do the process of rounding the fret ends and polishing and everything like that. Usually the fret ends don't look as cleaned up and nice as the rest of the fret is. I've seen it on cheap guitars, I've seen it on more expensive guitars. On this thing, the fret ends are literally as smooth, cleaned up, and polished as the rest of the fret. It's just something that I noticed almost right away, and you can definitely tell a difference between like this and some of the other guitars that I have while playing it. They feel absolutely great, but you can definitely tell just by looking at it that the fret ends are perfectly smooth and polished. So I thought that was something worth mentioning, and it's something that I really like just because it's a little fine detail that I happen to like, little fine details like that, I guess. As far as complaints, I have really zero complaints about this guitar. I think it's a lot of fun to play. Obviously, you kind of have to pay more attention to the maintenance as far as keeping it clean. And yeah, you're going to get those little surface scratches and everything. You're just going to be able to see them more because you're dealing with gloss black. And the gold hardware is a little bit more meticulous, just keeping it clean and being careful with what you use on it. That gold plating will come off very easily if you use something that's too abrasive or just too potent of a cleaner. So I kind of just try to avoid any kind of cleaners on the gold plating and just use a dry cloth or a dry polishing rag or whatnot. Eventually, just from playing it and rubbing against it, it's going to dull out, and you're going to see some wear in the gold plating. It's kind of, there's no way to prevent it unless you leave like the plastic on it or whatever. But in my opinion, it's just something that you know what you're getting into when you buy a gloss black guitar with gold hardware. I've never personally owned a gloss black guitar with gold hardware, so I kind of knew it would be a pain just to keep it perfectly clean looking all the time. But when I'm done playing this thing, I literally give it a full wipe down and cleaning, just because I want to keep all the, you know, my sweat and everything off the gold plating so nothing corrodes and everything like that. So you kind of just have to pay more attention to the maintenance of this guitar. But in the end, I knew what I was getting into, and it's not really something I can complain about. But I really love this thing. I'm super glad I bought it. I have a lot of fun playing it. It kind of pushes me to play other stuff than just riffing out metal riffs all day, and kind of allows me to experiment and go into different territories with cleans and reverbs and delays and stuff like that. And I have a lot of fun doing that, and I've been having a lot of fun doing it while I've had this guitar in my possession. I will probably keep this thing for a while. I don't see any reason to get rid of it because I've been wanting one for a while now, and I finally got it. But that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to cover. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. If you like what you saw today, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up here. If you have any questions, ask them down in the comments, and maybe think about subscribing. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, be a good person, drink a lot of water, and we will see you in the next video.